which was for Wisdom University, and we got to Chartres, and Chartres is an overwhelming experience, but after all of those sites, it became even more luminous. It really revealed a little bit of its truth, which is that it's a huge nuclear reactor of divine power. It's a magnificent building that enshrines all the deepest principles of the birth of the divine in the human, and it's on a hill that was the sacred place of the ancient indigenous people who worship the Divine Mother in her dark aspect there, the aspect of the Black One, who gives birth to the worlds. So it's a huge place, and I happened to read a book called The Golden Age of Chartres, which was about how these extraordinarily awake and passionate group of men, headed by Fulbert of Chartres, founded a Chartres mystery school, which was dedicated really to the final mystery enshrined in Chartres, which is the birth of the divine in the human, the birth of the divine in the heart, the mind, and the body, because they believed that that was Jesus' essential message to humanity, not only that he was, of course, a unique being, but that he was a pioneer of a birth that could be embraced and lived. So this thrilled me, and I said to Jim Garrison, who was with me in the train, I said, read this book, and he read it, and he was thrilled, and then we both decided, sort of in one great burst of enthusiasm, that we would co-found the Chartres Mystery School 1,000 years after it was founded originally, to pursue the same mystery, and this time, how could we bring together all ancient and modern knowledge, spiritual, other kinds, to birth a school of mystery that would help humanity through this period of very great distress. So we used the ancient model of the seven liberal arts, and Jim Garrison, who was the amazing president of Wisdom, is the one who's been pioneering all this and embodying all this. And we've met 5 times, and now on the 5th time, the magic happened. I think you can love your colleagues very much and respect them very much, and I think we all had great love and great respect for each other, but this time we were able to have great harmony and great mutual interplay as well, which is a new dimension. I think that we were all humbler, and more serious, and also more playful, and so it resulted in a miraculous experience, which is lingering with me deeply and inspiring me as I undergo my own first trying out of a new initiation template that I'm working on with my own group in the Institute of Sacred Activism in Oak Park. In fact, we just had the first day, and it was an astonishing first day, because we're working on the same mystery from the point of view of how to help people feel the divine within themselves, in their minds as illumined understanding, gnosis in their hearts as this divine compassion and passion for reality. And it is an experience of increased embodiment, because I'm convinced that the birth of the divine human is trying to take place, that it's the authentic meaning of this dreadful crisis, that this crisis is a kind of crucible, a death crucible which births the new. It is Kali dancing. Kali is destroying to birth, not to annihilate. And participating with that takes a lot of strength. It's not something you can do on anything but the strongest diet, and that's what we're trying to provide.
Right. So is this a group that you meet with? It's a consistent group?
Well, I founded the Institute of Sacred Activism because I wrote a book called The Hope, A Guide to Sacred Activism, which basically introduced the term and laid down what I believe to be the vision that's necessary to do this birth, because of my own inner experience and because of my study of the mystical traditions and because of my sense of the enormity of the crisis as a divine event, an event in our evolution, an evolutionary event which has 2 fundamental faces, the face of the destruction of our agendas and illusions, the face of the annihilation of the collective human false self, which is now lethal and murderous, and the face of the birth, which is the birth of what is born out of the destruction of the false self, which is the beginnings of divine consciousness, and the capacity, therefore, to work as embodied divine humans with the divine directly to transform the situation and help co-create with the divine a wholly new kind of human being, doing and being in very, very different ways and relationships to transform our current reality, which is untransformable from the level of consciousness which we are now in.
Right. It seems to me that it's probably one of the most difficult tasks of that we can undertake, because what we're talking about here is reconciling duality and polarity, the inner life and the outer life, and simultaneously saying yes and no at the same time, which it's a koan, it's a complete koan, and to be able to do that takes a great deal of practice and awareness and presence and consciousness. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, you couldn't have said it better. Thank you for understanding it so completely. I think you only get the reality of the situation when you realize you're going to have to go into permanent training.
Right.
And that means really having 5 kinds of practice at the core of your life. Cool, sacred practices that calm you down, that keep you steady, that keep you stable and connected with the divine peace. Heart sacred practices that keep your heart awake and in a state of adoration and gratitude and compassion, whatever the circumstances. So you have to train your heart to be strong enough to go on loving even in hell and great difficulty. Prayer practices that align you with the beloved at all moments, even the most difficult. Sacred physical practices, like the new yoga that I've tried to pioneer with my friend Karuna Erickson in our book Heart Yoga, a yoga that combines the deepest mystical roots of yoga with the light mysticism of evolutionary mysticism, so as to make yoga a crucible for the divinization of the body, a conscious crucible. And sacred dance and Reiki, other marvelous disciplines that enable you to open the body up to divine energies and awaken the latent divine energies within the body. And then you also need shadow work, because you cannot deal with the crisis without undertaking 2 levels of shadow work, an understanding of the collective shadow and the way in which it's keeping us paralyzed and depressed and in terrible dread and really wishing we weren't here, and our own shadow with its cowardice, with its narcissism, with its greed, with its desire for comfort, with its terror of standing out, all the things that keep us from realizing our own true empowerment.
Right.
And that's very difficult work, but it's possible. And if you combine all those things, then you are truly working with this evolutionary force that's birthing the mirth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In relation to that, we're also talking about 2 other dualities or polarities, and that's East and West. And you're extremely well versed and steeped in the Eastern tradition and Eastern classical tradition of letters and so forth. And I'd love your take on is the Eastern tradition antithetical to the Western mind? Jung actually touched on this.
Not at all. No. Well, Jung was talking for himself at a very particular moment of human evolution, where he really needed to make available the Western tradition of alchemy. And so he followed the Grail, not Ramana Maharshi. But I think what has happened since Jung is that the global heart-mind has come together in a marriage of the very best of the East with the very best of the West. And this marriage was prefigured in the great evolutionary philosopher Aurobindo, who himself was Indian but was educated in Cambridge, was a classical scholar, came back to India as a revolutionary, and then became the greatest ever evolutionary philosopher, perhaps the greatest mystical philosopher of the world, combining a Eastern understanding of divine identity with divine consciousness, with a Western belief that history is the dancing ground of evolution and of a evolutionary destiny for humanity, so that he fused the peace of identity, the radiance and freedom and liberation of identity, with the great battle for the birth of the divine human in matter on the earth, which is the secret meaning of the Western quest for ever greater progress.
Right.
And this was a huge achievement on the most massive scale, because it brought a new world into being, which he was experiencing himself and giving the directions to achieve. So that is the central vision that I think all evolutionary philosophers whether they agree completely with Aurobindo or differ with him on certain aspects, they all must take their roadmap from him, because that's the complete, I think, map for what we are going through. We're going through a huge evolutionary event which is unprecedented in its difficulty, but unprecedented also in its possibility, and we should concentrate on the possibility with all our hearts now, because only that will make us strong enough, and we need to realize that possibility in the core of our lives as a reality, because then we won't be reading it in books, we'll be living it in our lives, and that will give us the strength and the passion and the peace and the clarity and the sheer doggedness that we're going to need to help the human race not only survive but transform what is coming down.
Right. Well, there's a lot.
Does that make sense to you?
Well, it does make sense to me.
And it's the marriage, you see, of East and West.
I respect Aurobindo a great deal as far as the Indian mystics go. He's right up there with me, and his work in the body is it's exemplary.
It's crucial. That is the crucial work, because without the body becoming sacred in every way, there's no embodiment. So Aurobindo's work is absolutely core, as indeed is the work of the tantric renaissance that's happened in the last 40 years.
Let me ask you a quick question, just departing. I'm sorry, I just jumped in here because the thought came into my mind. Let's say you're a fisherman down in the Gulf of Mexico, and you don't know Aurobindo from Paramahansa Yogananda. I mean, these are very foreign terms, and you know that at this point in time, your way of life is being threatened by a force.
Very good question.
Far greater than you can understand at this point. How first of all, what does that represent culturally, and what would you share with somebody like that in that situation?
First of all, I would say to them, this tragedy that has happened to you is shared by millions of people all over the world who have survived even worse tragedies with extraordinary grace, humility, and dignity. So can you. And I would talk to them about my Indian friends and my African friends and people I know in Haiti who have managed to come through absolute hell and got through it with great dignity and renewed purpose and deeper compassion, and that there is a way through, and it's through the heart. And what everyone who meets great affliction needs to do is to surrender to the divine love that is using this affliction and can use this affliction to greatly open their hearts, greatly deepen their trust in God, and awaken them to the real situation which is going on in the culture, which is that we are dominated by corporations who have no morals and don't care about anything except making money. And it's time that they let this situation open their minds and hearts and bodies to the reality of a very oppressive system which is bound to treat people like that in the end, and that they're suffering for that, but that they can use their pain to get wise and to awaken the country to what's really happening.
I think that's a brilliant and lucid answer. Can we talk about some of the stages that somebody like that would go through? I mean, we're talking about anger, we're talking about grief, and
yes, you're talking for the first thing that I would do if I had the chance would be to take down an amazingly powerful group of nonviolent communicators, people who know how to allow people to let out the full extent of their grief and rage in conditions that are guiding them through a process with it, very tenderly, very simply, very humbly. These kinds of people exist, this kind of training exists. It's crucial to helping people deal with trauma because it simultaneously allows people to express the full range of the trauma and then uses that full expression to help ease them towards acceptance and surrender and forgiveness in their own time, but knowing that that's the destination that's going to free them and free them to find the energy to reconstruct their life with hope.
And where does action rise out of this, Andrew?
Well, I think everything should go together because I think I would advise them to do deeper inner work, to pray to the divine as they understand it for strength and support, and to do these exercises of nonviolent communication. And I would teach them some wonderful spiritual exercises that I know from different traditions, which anyone can do and can be uplifted by and strengthened by.